Welcome, everyone. This is Work Made Human. I'm Nichole Mendez, Director of Talent Acquisition here at BAM.
And I am Jill Veglahn, Head of People at BAM. And with us today, coming from Tenerife, an island far away, is Gigi Brett, Head of Investments at EWOR. Welcome, Gigi.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks so much for joining today. To kick things off, Gigi, you've essentially built your career around human potential. So whether it was helping optimize people's biology previously at pre-seed and upstream to now really helping founders optimize their personal ventures as head of investments. So with the shift from founder to investor, there must be a why. What made you want to, from building your own mission to also now betting on the mission of others?
Totally. So I think maybe some context on the through line of the human potential question, because I think it really has been my driving force. So my first company was actually called Battelle, focused on early childhood education and sleep. And the thesis very much is that the earlier you intervene in a child's health and education, the higher the compounding returns. And it was documented by a Nobel laureate called James Heckman. Very interesting to see, like there's very tangible effects in early intervention in general. And the optimizing human potential question very much came to light with Upstream, where when I started Upstream as my second company, was looking for where is the highest impact intervention or point of leverage that you can intervene in a child's health and a human life. Where is that point? And I'm not a parent, but I observed that the moment people became parents, this sort of battle with how much control can you exert over a child or not, and you want what's best for them, but ultimately they're their own person. And my thesis kind of really developed on the most that you can do as a parent is to make sure you optimize yourself to pass on the best version of yourself. And I think that through line was very much in health with pre-seed as well. And then onto the investor side. So a few things. I think that building companies is one of actually the most interesting creative acts that you can do. And I know people don't think of it as an art form and a creative act often, but it's an expression of who you are, an extension of yourself. And I think that if I look at how do I apply my skill set to have the highest leverage in things that can really shape the world and change the world, increasingly the sort of breadth of skill has gotten wider, and being able to support people who are on that mission and help them actually with the more human side of it, which, we also think of entrepreneurs as very one-dimensional, but they're people with conflicts and with relationships that are having hard times. And there's a whole human behind it. And I think, again, like this question of how do you support these incredible builders in building something really quite exceptional is just a really, really interesting one for me. And so honestly, it was a bit of a plot twist in my life where I didn't expect to come to the investor side this early. So I thought it would be a few years still. I've always wanted to come to the investor side. But it kind of, life threw me a bunch of curveballs last year. And things just kind of lined up unbelievably serendipitously. And when I was discussing things with the EWOR team, it was just patently clear that they themselves were like an unbelievably ambitious team who were just like building an absolute rocket ship. And it was such a wonderful point of leverage for me to be able to really use my skill set to sort of like amplify a number of different people. So I think I love being in the field. I love being a founder, and I'm sure one day I'll go back. But I think being able to also help unblock and help sort of direction people and add fuel to the fire is just been it's actually such a gratifying role. So I think there were motivations to answer the question more succinctly. A lot of serendipity, a lot of things just kind of came together. But it's just like a wonderful, fascinating journey applying sort of my founder skill set through an investor lens.
So that's exactly it. It's the human behind it. And that's why we do this. That was so beautifully said. And the emotion you have and the passion you have for it is like, it's palpable through the screen. So
yeah, your energy is infectious. You absolutely are lit up as you're talking about it.
So as head of investments, I'm sure you see a ton of pitches consistently. And correct me if I'm wrong, I did my research, but most investors seem to obsess over, I believe, two different things. So total addressable market and unit economics. How much How much of your investment thesis is actually based on EQ, so the emotional intelligence, and more of the founding health of the team?
It's such a difficult one. I would say it's actually a third that we look at primarily, which is very much, it's much more founder focused than company focused. Like we're looking for the person behind it. It very much is that through that lens. I would say EQ is actually a part of it, but it's more, is this someone who has the ability to build an intergenerational company? And is this someone who has the grit and has consistently sort of been able to prove in life that they have done incredible things time and time again? They're able to push themselves. They're able to sort of like be in the trenches, because I think the founding journey is one of the most tricky, difficult places to be, and with a very, very low chance of success is the reality of it. And so the type of person that will, number one, get into the arena, and then the type of person who will actually stay in the arena long enough to give themselves a chance to succeed is a very particular set. Mm-hmm. And so EQ, I would say my kind of broad understanding of EQ is like emotional intelligence broadly. I think that where it kind of really highlights is, and I would say this is a part of EQ, is grit, resilience, determination. And I think part of that is actually really being able to know yourself and know your limits, or to know that you can push beyond limits. And so I would say EQ, funnily enough, in the sort of just as sort of a metric, I would say the subsets of EQ is really where we look, and really look for like, who are the outliers and why are they the ones who are going to be able to build intergenerational companies?
I mean, we work with a founder, and so I just feel like you're describing her in so many ways, and it's so it's a very rare and specific type of person.
Yeah. And sometimes like weird and wonderful people. And this is part of the thing I absolutely love is, I think the diversity of thought and the diversity of background that you get, and the just people doing things in totally unconventional ways. But I think the through line is always that there's a deep passion about it. There's an absolute determination that's like, okay, cool, I'm going to get no's 100 times and I'm going to get back up and I'm going to go for the 101st time and I'm going to win. Like I just am. And maybe it'll take me longer than I anticipate. Maybe it's going to be more difficult than I anticipate. But it's those people who just are absolutely relentless, refuse to take no for an answer. And I just love, I think this is the other reason, kind of going back to the first question, why I love the investor side. These type of people who just are deeply passionate about something are what light me up completely. So And
the rest of the world, I mean, Beck says all the time she's positively delusional. The rest of the world is delusional, right? They're like, you're out of your mind. Yeah. Okay. You recently posted that co-founder conflict is one of the leading causes, or the leading cause of startup failure, and we don't talk about it enough. Yeah. So what would you say is the silent killer you see most often?
So I think I actually was on a panel about this at Start Summit recently in Europe as well. And I think the best analogy to start with is I think a co-founder relationship is very much like a marriage in a lot of ways. You're committing to someone to build in the same direction. And I think people often don't do the hard work up front in both relationships and in co-founder relationships, which is, do we really want the same thing? Are our values aligned? So I think up front, the biggest, I would say, mistake is assuming that you're on the same page in terms of how hard are you going to push? How long are we going to go at this? Where are our thresholds? What do we actually want? Do we want an exit at a 200 million valuation, or do we want to push this bigger? Like it's almost like analogous to someone who's getting into a relationship. Like, do we want kids? Do you want to get married? Where do you want to live? For how long? It's all of those questions that are not dug into sufficiently enough, I think. And I've seen this play out a number of times. And I think one of the unfortunate outcomes is often resentment that gets built up, where you have one co-founder who's doing 75% of the work and the other one's doing 25% of the work, but they should have equal equity share, for example. That's really hard. It's a difficult dynamic to be in. And I think founders don't get given the tools. It's basically just communication tools, but the communication tools to really be able to address difficult conversations. Yeah. And we also underestimate that this is the person who becomes, in a way, your best friend, in a way, your marriage partner, or the person who sees you the most. They see your ups and downs. You're in the trenches with them. But if you think about dating, you can date someone for 8 months and you kind of like, there's a lot of courtship and a lot of, is this going to work? Are we aligned? With co-founders, it's often like, cool, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do this too. Great. We start a company and that's it. And you can't backtrack. So I think it's twofold. Number one, advice I would give at least is make sure upfront that you're aligned on exactly what you want and how to build the company and the value system, I would say. And then number two is there's going to be conflict and there's going to be disagreements. And I think it's just also like a relationship, you don't not want any disagreements.
Yeah.
But I think speaking from my own experience, one of the most powerful, I would say, mantras that I employed with my first co-founder was disagree and commit, which is you can disagree with me. That's totally fine. But if it's either I have authority and responsibility on a decision or you do, either way, doesn't matter. Whoever has the authority and responsibility, they get to make the decision and the other person can disagree as much as you want. But once the decision is made, you commit. And it's not, oh, I told you so, whatever. It's like, cool, it's a decision we made and you move on. So I think creating the hygiene and the scaffolding of good communication is also just super, super important.
Building on what you were just talking about, you have navigated a variety of relationship dynamics clearly as a founder in the trenches and now as the investor from the observer seat. So drawing from your experience, what does healthy conflict resolution actually look like at a startup?
Well, also the maybe not known is I actually, when I was younger, I wanted to go into conflict resolution. That was my thing. I actually did I did courses on it. I went and shadowed a bunch of really like top class mediators. So I love this topic very much. What does good communication look like in a startup? I think the primary mistake is not being very clear on roles and responsibilities and ownership. And I think overlapping ownership is difficult because I think this idea of having authority and responsibility tied together is so important and underestimated. So if I have responsibility for something, it means that if something goes wrong, I'm the one, the buck stops with me. I'm the one who has to take accountability. But if I have all the responsibility for something and I don't have the authority to actually make decisions around that, that is just the worst of all worlds, where you feel completely powerless, but you know ultimately if it fails, it's going to be on you. And so making sure that every decision has a clear owner, number one, and that ownership is coupled with both the authority to do something about it, plus the responsibility if things go right or wrong, either way, I think is key. I also think it's not a bad thing to actually be very upfront and open about, there will be conflict, and maybe even setting aside, like, for example, in some long-term relationships, people have monthly check-ins or weekly check-ins or whatever it might be, where it's like, let's just have a session where I'm going to check in. How are you feeling? Are you enjoying things? Where's your energy at? Like, I don't think people, especially in the early days, do enough about that. And this is not to say to take away from the early stage momentum where, you're working 18-hour days and it's insane and crazy. And there's also a beautiful part to that. But I think oftentimes we forget that it's another person on the other side of the co-founder dynamic, and assuming that you've done the work up front to make sure that values and goals are aligned, then you should be on the same team. And then I think it's really just about like making sure you are able to give each other the benefit of the doubt and say, look, at the end of the day, I totally disagree with you. Or at the end of the day, I totally messed up and I fully hold myself accountable. Or you totally messed up. And you know what? That's okay. We're on the same team, and kind of keeping very much facing in the same direction on the same team. Because I think also I would say incentive structures are really important in terms of really being intentional about how you split equity. So if you have a 50-50 split versus, let's say, there's two co-founders, or you have a 40-60 split, the dynamics change. And I think just being very aware and upfront, and not to say one's right or wrong, there's different flavors of that, but very aware of the incentive structure that you have put in place, and realizing that it's a complex human with a whole bunch of life going on the other side, and a little bit of humanity, I think, always goes a long way.
Yeah. So well said.
So well said. And I love the there's different flavors for sure.
Yeah.
Looking back at your career now, having been the founder and investor, what is one leadership belief that you held maybe earlier on in your career that now you've totally changed your mind on?
I think I used to think that anyone in leadership had to know what was going on, in the sense of like, oh, I know the answer. Like I've got this figured out. And Yeah, and I think this is maybe also because a lot of my early role models were men, and so it was very much the archetype of vulnerability, at least in the models I had early. And I'm not even talking necessarily about childhood, I'm talking more about kind of entering the workforce. There wasn't much vulnerability in it. And I think my internalized belief then was, okay, I need to emulate this. And as I started sort of saying, okay, huge if true, if I actually can just lead with more vulnerability, for example, and started actually testing that out and seeing that you actually don't lose any of the respect or the power or anything. In fact, if you say like, guys, number one, I don't know what's going on right now, that's okay, we'll figure it out. Or number two, and this is one thing I think that really surprised me was, I went through it, there were a few times, but there was one time in particular where we had to let go a lot of people, and it was tough, and it was like having to keep the rest of the team who was still on, keep them motivated, and we were in the trenches, like it was touch and go. And at that point being like, so I think there's two defaults. One is that you close up and you just say, okay, protect them from it, don't tell them what's going on, and you kind of like try and keep it all yourself, or be super open and be like, guys, we are totally in the trenches right now, and this is good. The next 6 months are going to be really hard, and we are going to have to push, and it's going to be late night, and it's going to be risky, and I totally get that, and we're going to get through, and we will get through, and yes, it's going to require a lot from everyone, but like we're on the same mission. And I think giving people, I was so surprised at how much people stepped up in those circumstances, like unbelievably. Like the moment you actually say, you give them a bit of trust, actually just trusting that like you can handle this, I was surprised at how many people really could in fact, everyone on my team could handle it. And that was just such a relief, because it went from something that like I had to protect the team from this sort of dire situation being like, the reality is it's a dire situation, we're all in this together, and suddenly the whole dynamic shifted. So I think probably just like leadership style, I think more than anything else has changed, and my belief, and I think my trust in the fact that I can lead with authentic vulnerability, and it's actually a real strength, not a weakness.
Yeah.
I think we have this belief that like people can't handle hard truths, and so we don't share them too often. And the reality is we feel the truth when you're telling it. We feel when you're withholding and it's not true.
Totally.
It's true. And when you go with the truth, people often will respond far better than you could imagine. So
totally.
Especially when it's difficult.
Yeah,
completely. Yeah. And I know it's like every time when someone's given me a hard truth, I am so grateful for it. I honestly, I'm like, oh, you know what? I know that was so difficult for you to tell me that really difficult thing, but thank you so much for trusting that I can handle it. And yet I think it's, and I've found that myself, even now in some sort of friendships, that I'll hold back on something and I'm like, I'm not doing them a service. I actually, saying the hard truth is the kindest thing that you can possibly do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being mindful of time. I know we got a little bit of a start, but I do want to be mindful of time, especially you're much later in the day. We have two quick questions and we'll wrap this up. You briefly alluded to when you were younger that you were interested in conflict resolution, but when you were a kid, like little Gigi, what did you want to grew up, and in what ways do you see that version of yourself showing up in your work today?
Such a good question. I wanted to be two different things, and I think this maybe the stark contrast between the two opposite sides of the spectrum kind of says it all. On the one hand, I wanted to be a bush girl, which was basically I wanted to go live in the Amazon and live in a tree with the chimpanzees and like build a nest and be like basically a female Tarzan. That was one version. I grew up in the African bush, so very much very close to nature a lot of the time. The other version of what I wanted to be was head of the United Nations. So it was total opposite. I wanted to be in a position of authority and leadership that was, I think at the time, I mean, now I would revise my answer dramatically because I think the bureaucracy just kills me and there's much more effective ways to be able to sort of like influence people for the positive. But I think the underlying theme was to be able to, hold leadership positions that had impact on, I think one of my North Stars, I actually thought about my North Star. This is a very unconventional answer, especially on a podcast like this, but I think one of my North Stars is I think love is often just the answer. And I know that that's not something we usually say in a business setting, but I still think it's true. And I still think you can lead with love, you can make decisions with love. And I think if there were more decisions made with like a good loving intention, even if it is a good loving intention to make this company the best company in the world, I think there's flavors of it. I think there's so much good that can happen. So yeah, those are my two. And I would say probably it's coming out. I'd say there's aspects. My bush girl aspect is probably getting satiated when I go home and to South Africa. We've got a place up in the bush, so I spend a lot of time there. But I'm much more playing out my more I'd say mentorship, leadership role at the moment. And I think with startups, one of my most enjoyable things is just actually, I mean, yes, I can give business advice. Yes, I can give advice on go-to-market and fundraising and all of that, which I do. But it's more when it comes to the human dynamic of like, okay, the co-founder conflicts, the relationship dynamics that are tricky, the fact that it's really, really hard, or the fact that you're running out of money and you don't know how to think about, if you're overwhelmed by the fact that you don't know how you're going to pay rent. Like, it's those real human questions that I think are the places where I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
Well, to UN, to conflict resolution, founder to investor. It makes sense.
I'm glad you see the sense in it.
Oh, Gigi, it has been lovely, like so lovely getting to have you here today on Work Made Human. Everybody, this is Gigi Brett, Head of Investments at EWOR, reminding us of the power of vulnerability and that love never disappoints and never fails and always works. And I recently have actually told two of my coworkers, I would tell Nichole that I love them, because I do. Yeah. So I couldn't agree more. Love is it.
It's the answer.
And it is welcome on Work Made Human. And our final question is, what gives you hope about the future of work?
I just think humans are incredible. And I know that there's so much fear. There's actually so much fear that I'm seeing around, I think it's existential fear that's built up for the first time in a long time, just because AI is changing so quickly and we have no idea what the future is going to be. But I have such an unwavering faith in humans' ability to figure it out that, like, I have no idea what the world's going to look like. I do know that, yeah, I back the human race significantly. So I think it's the people. Yeah.
People, even as intelligent as AI can be.
Yeah.
The people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.